Good evening, everybody. Welcome to TriVersity Talk, and I am Wendy Stewart Kaplan,
and I am Steven Bloomer Teague, and we are so excited that you've joined us. This is our fifth episode.
Our fifth episode.
I don't even know how that happened, but yes. So our fifth episode, and you're either watching us on Facebook Live or YouTube Live, because we've decided to air this live on YouTube as well. So however you're watching us, welcome. One quick thing, if you're watching this on Facebook and you don't know that we have a YouTube channel, I put a handy little link in the comments to this very segment on YouTube. So if you just click that, even if you're watching it on Facebook, you could give us a subscribe or a like.
Please subscribe. It's a push. It's a smash of the button.
We will love you to death if you do it. And with that, I think our producer will be happy with us. So
that's absolutely. Would you like to introduce our fabulous guest tonight?
I would love to introduce our fabulous guest tonight. Our guest was one of the first people when I became executive director of TriVersity in January who reached out to me, and I don't know him all that well, but he's been very, very kind to me and incredible. And I now am very happy to introduce Jason Goodman, who is the executive director of the Pennsylvania Youth Congress.
Welcome, Jason. How are you tonight?
Doing well, relatively these days, but I'm doing well. How are you?
Really to have you here. I think you and I first met. We met at one of our TriVersity picnics, the TriVersity family picnic. And little did we know, okay, we didn't look into our crystal ball to now, and here we are all together again virtually. But we're together again, and that's all that matters.
Absolutely. And this gentleman put me in the hot seat for my own little interview on Zoom a while ago. So I was very excited to say, let's return the favor.
Absolutely. Jason, the tables are turned on you now. So come along for the ride.
I'm here for it.
So
Thank
Jason,
you for the invitation.
Absolutely. So you've had a busy day, correct? What have you been up to today?
Every day is different, and it has been for the past 10 years that I've been involved in statewide LGBT work. Today, I think there's two things to note. We have had an incident up in Union County, which is in the central part of the state. There was a grocery store that posted an anti-mask, anti-COVID conspiracy theory flyer, but it included anti-LGBT language. This was, caused a local uproar. It was a few weeks ago, but it stirred the local community to really organize. And in the wake of that incident, they had a wonderful socially distant pride protest in downtown Mifflinburg. And so it was really great to be there. I was 25 feet away from another person. There were lots of cars in support going past. There was also lots of cars spewing lots of hateful speech towards the protesters, but it was really inspiring to be there. It was the first LGBT pride event, for the larger community in this county. And we've been seeing a lot of that recently, whether it's in Gettysburg or Altoona. It's been so wonderful to note this incredible progress. But we're also facing a lot of challenges. And so today, I've also been keeping tabs and figuring out how to support. We have activists in Pittsburgh, for example, particularly queer and trans activists of color who have been targeted with trumped up charges from the police for leading protests. We have Black Lives Matter leaders who need support, and we need to continue showing up for this really important, work right now for racial and economic justice. So that's just a little snippet. Later this evening, I have a statewide call with our PYC family, our board, our PYC ambassadors, to strategically look at the dozen plus projects that we have going on at any given time, whether that's addressing racist mascots in our schools or pressing for trans student policies, statewide non-discrimination protections, local non-discrimination protections. I'm sure you have lots of questions about many things that we do, but that's later tonight. So it's always on. It's always on.
It never stops. It never stops. So how did the Pennsylvania Youth Congress come about? Because as you know, our organization, TriVersity, initially, a lot of what we did was programs for our kids, our high school kids. And Steven will jump in on this with me. You know, we're hearing, oh, you know what, the high school kids don't really need those services so much anymore because it's more inclusive. Now, I'm going to throw that into your universe. What do you think about that, and how does it relate to what you do?
Well, I think every organization has to adapt. We have to meet the needs of our communities that we put ourselves out there to support. And so it's been great to see TriVersity grow and adapt over the years. Certainly my organization has as well. It very much depends. There are some parts of the state where 10 years ago, the urgent need was particularly helping young LGBT people come out and live their true selves. Now that's happening in middle school or earlier. And so some of the challenges have changed. Some of the conversations and the programming has changed. But what has remained the same is the necessity of community and the necessity of the activism toward liberation, toward equity, towards justice. So we have a lot of work to do. And I know that TriVersity is up in northeastern PA in your neck of the woods, really doing the work. So I don't have anything to add. I'm not from your community. That's something that I'm very attuned with when I do statewide work. I have love and identify with all parts of the state, but you know your community best. And so I'm here to support you in however you're maneuvering forward.
Well, I think Jason brought up a good point. It's got to do with each individual community, and it's different in every community. So I guess all of us have to think about the immediate needs that we're addressing in our own communities.
Absolutely. And so you're seeing the urgency of action, for example, around the Allegheny County Jail in Pittsburgh related to trans folks in that county jail. But you're seeing in Mifflinburg protests related to hate speech, or we still have places just in the past month we've seen neo-Nazis, the KKK openly marching in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, or Gettysburg. And these things are unacceptable and hurtful, and we have to do better. So this work looks differently in every area, but we're all united through our push for inclusion, for justice, the liberation, for sexual orientation, gender identity, and all people.
And Jason, the Pennsylvania Youth Congress, was it you that established the Pennsylvania Coalition of LGBTQ organizations?
So the story of PYC goes through many years, and I'm proud to have been one of the people who helped form the organization. I'm still with it. When I was in college at the University of Pennsylvania, I certainly had this energy for social justice work and was very involved with the LGBT student groups on my campus, particularly the Landau Alliance, which was the coalition of the LGBT groups, and debacle, which was the Jewish LGBT organization.
I like that.
Oh my gosh, that is fantastic.
Under my tenure, we did away with the acronym because it initially stood for Jewish, bisexuals, and gays and lesbians, but not inclusive, right? So in 2000, this was 2010. Wow, my gosh, it's been this 10 years. We made it we kept the name. It was just so catchy. And our back to school event was J Bagels and Locks. It was just,
that's fabulous.
I have a lot of pride for that group. But I was noticing that overall, our student groups were very isolated and insular in looking towards what was happening just on our own campuses. So where I went to school in Philadelphia, Temple University's LGBT groups, Drexel University, we weren't talking to each other, let alone having a voice in City Hall. And so I started having coffees with different leaders, and all of a sudden, this kid from Montgomery County, right outside Philly, was driving to Erie and Scranton and Pittsburgh and all the nooks in between. And a year after that, we formed our youth-led, independent, statewide LGBT organization. We became the first youth-led, statewide LGBTQ advocacy organization in the nation. And we are now the only statewide LGBT advocacy organization based in Harrisburg. So we do a lot. We've come a long way, but we have a lot of work to do. So I'm really excited to have been a part of so much of this organization's history, transforming from this, loose knit group of young activists into a formal policy advocacy organization helping the lives of many, many Pennsylvanians.
Absolutely.
Has your group been a role model for other groups to spring up around the country using what you did as the basis of it?
I think I'm humbled to know a few places where we've been helpful in being a model. But this works hard. My organization is still an underdog in so many different ways. We're not funded by the big national organizations, the foundations. We're really just supported by individual supporters in Pennsylvania. And even then, it's not the bigger parts of the organized LGBT movement. So we have a lot of challenges to get to where we want to be and grow to where we need to be. So I think we're successful in the work we do. I mean, everyone knows our grit and our wins, whether it's in the courts or with school boards or in community. I think we developed a really good track record of that. So our impact is big, but our capacity and where we need to go still leaves a lot to be wanted. So I hope that we've been inspirational in the work, but we have a lot to do to build. I mean, I'm the only full-time statewide LGBT advocate. Ohio has 17, New Jersey has about 9.
Wow.
So, and we're larger. So we have to grow. But I think, that's how I'd answer that question. Because it's like, I'm proud of what we've done, but I know to be the truest model, we need to get to that next level.
Well, to get to that next level, what needs to happen? What can we do or our viewers do to help us get to?
Yeah, because people are going to want to know that.
Absolutely. I mean, engagement is important, but funding is also really important. We need staff. We need to keep the lights on. We need to make photocopies for the legislators across the street. I'm coming to you from our state headquarters in Harrisburg, and we're directly across the street from our state capitol. We are up against some forces where they have fleets of lobbyists, and we are volunteer advocates across the state. So we need you to come get involved. I'm sure at some point in the program you asked me how to do that. But lots of information on our website, on the campaigns that we work on, writing your legislator. All of those things help us directly, but indirectly, I mean, the generalized answer is keep fighting. Whatever it is that you're helping people in your own community, beyond your community, keep doing that. The conversations you're having about education on LGBTQ issues, on racial and economic justice, helping support individuals and other organizations that are doing important work. All of those things are important. So we shouldn't get siloed into all these different organizations, but we are a niche organization. LGBTQ policy in Pennsylvania, young LGBTQ leadership in Pennsylvania, particularly serving our rural and small town communities. And so we have, again, a lot of work to do, and it's funding and engagement. That's what will help us, and in turn, hopefully help more people.
So Jason, I need to know at what age did you realize that you were going to become an activist and an advocate? Do you think you were born that way?
No, and I still don't know if I guess that's what people can call me, but I didn't come into this work to be an advocate. I came to help people in my community, my friends and my family. And I don't mean that in a corny way. I was studying environmental science and urban studies at Penn, and I was determined, and I continued. I got my master's in urban spatial analytics. I then went through law school and became I did become an attorney last year. I took the bar exam last year and passed. So thank you. So I've been doing this through school, but I am still focused on what my career will become. And all of this is part of my experience, but I didn't come into this to be an advocate. I'm using the capacity and tools that I have to help people. And right now I'm in that moment where I'm able to do this work. So I don't know. I think it was just a matter of place, time, and need. I had been working a lot of other urgent social justice, environmental, lots of other issues within my school. But when I noticed that there was just almost nothing related to statewide LGBT work in Pennsylvania, that was, that was a need, and I was able to help with it, and I've stuck with it for now 10 years. So yeah, it just fell into place, and I'm going to continue to support this work for the rest of my life.
I love that. I love your commitment. It's interesting because you started moving and shaking, as I call it, around the same time as TriVersity. When we formed, and we formed for the same reason, we saw the need. But we all make it sound so easy seeing that need, but that's not so easy for everyone. That's why I asked you that question, when did you realize you wanted to be an advocate or an activist? I've always just chomped at the bit. And when I was a kid, my mother called me Crusader Rabbit. You know who Crusader Rabbit is, going to go out there and right all the wrongs in the world. So thank you for everything that you've done. I mean, it's so impressive, and it's an inspiration. Certainly, working with the youth, that's our tomorrow. Okay, that's where it's all going to happen.
I will interrupt you. Young people are today.
Yeah, that's
just tomorrow.
Point. Right.
And so whenever I hear that, I'm like, wait, no.
No, it's happening now.
Every right to be at the have full equality at the community table. My organization was built because we didn't have a space, so we built our own table. If I can just go back to your question about how you got into this, because I think that's something that people enjoyed me telling them about, because it's very again, coming from that at the place and the time where the work needed to be done. So I was 19 when I heard that you could be fired for being LGBTQ in Pennsylvania, kicked out of restaurant, library. We didn't have an explicit protection under state statute for sexual orientation and gender identity in housing, employment, and public accommodations. And so that was really frustrating to me. But I had known that the city of Philadelphia, the city of Pittsburgh, and a few others had passed these local laws. So coming from a more open-minded suburb of Philadelphia, I broached this with my township commissioner, who happened to be the township board of commissioners president at the time, and said, hey, so haven't really done before in a township, but could we consider this ordinance? And I just got resounding yes after resounding yes. And after 2 years of going to civic associations, talking with political leaders, working to build a movement, we got it passed unanimously. We became the first township in the state and the first in Montgomery County to do so. And now we have over 20 ordinances in Montgomery County. We were 18 in Pennsylvania, and now we have 58 as of last year in Huntington, which my organization was happy to support. So just in 10 years, this work has grown a lot, but it just started because, when any one of us sees an injustice, if we have the resources and the privilege to be able to do the work, we should do the work. And so when I saw that if you put your commitment to the grindstone and really press forward in your own community, you can get laws passed. And that was really influential for me by saying, okay, maybe we could do something at the state level. And we have.
I think it's really important what you just said about that you believed that you could get those laws passed, and you did, because certainly in this environment, a lot of the time people are feeling helpless. They don't think that they can change things. Somebody like you, with what you're doing and the people that you work with, you're constantly changing things, and there's not anything stopping you. That's an important message, I think, to get out there, and you certainly just did. Thank you.
Well, and a question I have for you is in the face of Bostock, is what's the work that still needs to be done? Is there anything else that needs to be done post Bostock? We can, be employed as long as there are 15 more employees and being gay and trans. But is that it? Where do we go from here?
Right.
There is so much work to do towards equity, justice, liberation. It's not just the passage of one law or the winning of one court case, but we should celebrate. This was a big win, and it will transcend into a number of other federal court cases that could be brought up. And it's really exciting to see where the Bostock ruling will go. I'm an attorney. I'm not a specialist in this area of the law, but I think, you have already hit on some of the important points, which include the Bostock ruling was for a federal statute, for a federal law, Title VII, which only deals with certain kinds of employers, certain sizes of employers. So 15 or more employees is one of the criteria that you can then bring a claim to the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or the EEOC. And so, great. And we hope that this ruling will go into stop things like the proposed withdrawal of protections for trans people in healthcare, because this is discrimination on the basis of sex, and sex, the Supreme Court has now ruled, includes LGBT people. So that's the exciting part. But it's going to take a long time for that ruling to potentially spread to other laws, including our own in Pennsylvania. So we have our own state constitution, we have our own state laws, and we need to update all of our laws to include these protections. So getting sexual orientation and gender identity within our state statute for non-discrimination, which is called the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act of 1955. We have had legislation put out there for decades, and we are working very hard to get it passed. But that will help a lot of people, because the federal court case Bostock was employment for Title VII. Hopefully it will be read into federal protections on housing, but public accommodations, that's going to the restaurant, that's the things we do on a day-to-day basis, that's state law. So we need to update our state law to include these protections. But something I talk about in every presentation that I give is, it's not just about the laws we pass, it's about the education, because we could pass the best laws, but if they're not being followed, if no one knows about them, if no one's held accountable for breaking them, what good are they? Likewise, if people are being, really accepting in a community, all you need is to elect that one bad mayor or that one superintendent, and then just everything can go away if you don't have the policies in place. So you need both the policies and regulation and the laws and the education. So fighting for laws is about education. It's about recognizing a power structure is changing to recognize, for in our case, LGBT rights. And we also have to do the education piece, which is recognizing the legal rights that are necessary or needed. So a lot of work to get down into the nitty gritty, because it's not just non-discrimination, it's our prisons, it's immigration, it's racial and economic justice. All of these issues are LGBT issues too. And so it's not just stopping at one court case or one law. I know that was a long answer, but that's how I
that was such a great answer.
That was the answer I was hoping for. So
you really define that you have to have these underpinnings in place for things to work, and that's key for the success of any of this. In terms of education, I'm just thinking about and the work that you do. Do you go into high schools and talk to kids like along those lines?
Absolutely. I've been really honored to be able to go to dozens of high schools, maybe probably more than I don't know what the number would be over the years, but it's been really great to talk with GSAs in the high schools. Particularly, we work with college students as the basis with their GSAs, their gender and sexuality alliances, but the high schools are fantastic. So we also have GSAs in middle schools too. Obviously, school visits are not happening right now, but the first, I think for the first week we formed as an organization, I spoke at Masterman High School at an all-school assembly in Philadelphia. But we've done a lot of GSA meetings and the like over the years. And that's so important. Those are the personal relationships, and that's giving the education to either the broader student community or at least the LGBTQ students, giving them the information, the tools, all of the support, making sure that they know they are not alone in their small community or, just their high school.
Oh, we lost you. There you are. We lost you for a minute there.
Hello. Sorry. Yep. I hope that doesn't happen again. There's no way to do the like airplane mode, and then it still keeps your cell service, right? How that works.
Airplane, I think you can almost do it a la carte these days. Hold on, if you're on an iPhone,
Wait.
I can test this out.
Oh my God, we're trying something technical while we're on air. Stephen, I'm afraid.
I think we're fine. I think it was a glitch. If it happens again, no, I'll be back in a second.
Yeah, we know. We know where to respond to.
Oh, the last thing I was going to say was we have nearly 500 high school, middle school, college, LGBTQ student organizations. That is amazing. We have so many groups. So I try and go to as many as I can, but there's just, there's so many of them. And it's been great to see them proliferate over the years, not just in our cities and suburbs, but in rural and small town Pennsylvania as well.
Of course. So along those lines, I'm thinking, children may not be going back to school. All right. This is a big dilemma right now. What's being done to address what's going on in the GSAs now? They're dealing with kids learning, but no one is dealing with the other stuff. Like you said, you don't want anyone to feel like they're alone. This can be a very isolating time. So what would be available online for high school students and middle school students?
Absolutely. I think this is something we're still trying to figure out now as we were looking towards the school year. What are the specific resources, the online spaces that would be helpful for young LGBT folks in Pennsylvania? We could look toward other national organizations providing spaces. I think Trevor Project has something called Trevor Space, and they're a fantastic LGBT organization working with young folks. But we have about a dozen LGBT community support groups throughout the state. They usually meet weekly or bi-weekly. My hometown one was the Mainline Youth Alliance, so shout out to Maya, where I sort of grew up. And there's a really important space. So they may be going online in the near future if they haven't already. But it's hard. While we're both at a point where it's a positive that a lot of LGBTQ students who were targets of harassment or sexism or other forms of violence in their schools, that's been removed, and that's been a blessing. However, they could be in hostile home environments, and that can be worse. They may not have supportive family and may not be able to go in on a Zoom for fear someone could walk in or someone could overhear them. So that's also a challenge. And so figuring out exactly how this can work for everyone in an individualized way is so important. And people who don't have access to high-speed internet, I mean, these are issues that have been going on for a long time, but now they're exacerbated, our connectivity with young LGBT folks. So I think we'll figure it out as best we can because we have to. But ideally, we're all getting back to some semblance of being able to be in person with each other once there's a vaccine as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
So with the word vaccine, I'm going to make a very awkward segue here. So, we're TriVersity. And so depending on where you are within like a 5 to 6 mile radius, the response to COVID or how you've, listened and watched the response to COVID has been drastically different because you're either hearing from Governor Murphy in New Jersey, Governor Cuomo in New York, or Governor Wolf in Pennsylvania, as well as Dr. Rachel Levine. And this is kind of where I want to get into a little conversation about Dr. Levine because she's incredible. I mean, again, our Pennsylvania Secretary of Health, who, I mean, when you said earlier that you didn't necessarily consider yourself an advocate, I'm sure she probably feels the same way, but just by doing her job and being capable and competent, she's become almost a hero.
She is a hero. She's definitely a hero.
And, but there's also been a lot of hate, and there was some hate that happened just last week. And I wonder if you could give us a little bit of insight on what happened at the Boyertown County Fairgrounds.
Sure.
Or not Boyertown, Bloomsburg.
Bloomsburg.
And also
we had a federal court case in Bloomsburg.
I know, and I had that on my brain, apparently.
But also, if you can just give us a little backstory for people that are tuning in that don't know what the incident
Absolutely.
was and who Dr. Rachel Levine is, because I sing her accolades up and down the street. Thank you.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. You broke up for a second. So we have had a lot of incidents over the past few months of transphobia directed at Dr. Rachel Levine. She is our Secretary of Health. She was inaugurated, She was our Physician General, and then became Secretary of Health following. And she has done a remarkable job on the day-to-day before COVID and now. She has saved countless lives. There was a study from Drexel University that found that her decisions had saved the lives of over 7,000 Pennsylvanians. There's a reason that Pennsylvania is noted as doing well, even though our cases are now going up, but they're going up across the country. We have made some very smart decisions through our leadership within state government, within the governor's administration. So we have a lot to be thankful for. And she has said on numerous occasions, she is doing her job. She was doing her job at Penn State Hershey, as a medical provider. She was doing her job as Physician General, and she's doing her job now as a Secretary of Health in a pandemic. She said, she's the transgender Secretary of Health. Like, where's the cisgender Secretary of Health? She says that line all the time. I love it because it's true. She is the Secretary of Health, full stop, and she happens to be a transgender woman. She is doing more good for public education, just doing her job and doing it well. It's introducing maybe a lot of Pennsylvanians who didn't know about trans people or gender identity, didn't know someone personally, and now they're seeing her basically every day on live streams in the newspaper. Whether people agree with her policies or not, or the governor's policies, that's a separate situation. But unfortunately, a lot of people have weaponized their ignorance of gender identity and directed that toward her. So it's not just what happened last week, which I'll get to in a second, but it's been probably over a dozen now really, really awful acts of transphobia across the state, whether it's in Western Pennsylvania, Eastern Pennsylvania, Northern, Southern, wherever. We've seen it in everywhere. The comments sometimes on the Facebook Lives of the Department of Health's updates are just vile. So I don't think we should talk about it anymore. I think, it's bringing shining light on this negativity, but it was sort of bad what happened about a week ago. The Bloomsburg Fair, which is up in Columbia County in the north central part of the state, had a dunk booth where they had someone impersonate Dr. Levine crudely in a very transphobic act. It was horrible, and there were lots of folks very upset in this part of the state. So we supported them. We, a few days after this happened, helped organize with other organizations and trans organizations a joint letter signed by over 50 LGBTQ organizations throughout the Commonwealth to demand certain changes from the Bloomsburg Fair. So we didn't get to get a response, but thank you, TriVersity, for being one of those groups.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We will see what happens. The governor has also issued a statement, but this is a distraction. We have to focus on the pandemic, and it's unfortunate that some people are using moments like this for a hateful agenda.
Absolutely.
But the people in Columbia County are wonderful, and they're strong, and they're organizing, and they're saying this isn't our town, this isn't our county. And that's the voice that's going to win at the end of the day.
So on that note, I'm going to tell you, a reporter or a member of the media.
I can't hear you.
Oh no! Can you hear me now?
Can you hear us now? Oh no!
It's regular Verizon.
I hate when this happens.
I know.
Can you
Is
hear
your
us
mic
now?
on?
It should be. Okay, technical difficulties.
Just bear with us.
I'm going
Station
to remove myself from the
identification.
stream and then come back shortly.
in.
Sorry, everyone.
Okay, we'll be
But you can hear me.
hear you.
We can hear you.
Oh, now I hear you fine. Wow, you just needed to log back out, I think.
You worked his magic. What did you do? What did you do?
I essentially did what you always do in the case of a computer issue: reboot.
God, that old
Amazing.
reboot works every time. Okay.
Absolutely. So we had a member of the media in or around Bloomsburg, not Boyertown, contact us, and I mean, I will tell you, when this first came down, I was like Googling. I was like, I don't even know where Bloomsburg is. Yeah. So when this person contacted us, I was a little taken aback, but she told me this story. She said that she knows, or that someone called her, a couple, and they were so almost heartbroken because this was their community that did this. And she was calling, asking, well, what can we do? And I just wanted to know from you, what would you say to that couple who called, who is heartbroken at their community? How do we address them?
Whenever something happens like this, my first move is to ask what would help the people impacted by this act of hate. So let's go to trans folks in Columbia County and trans folks across the state about what would be helpful. I think there's a lot of responses to that question, but for sure it's addressing the systemic transphobia or bigotry that pervades in this county fair's leadership team. So they need to go through training, and that training should be done by trans people who are compensated for their time and expertise. Yeah. So we need funding for training for the larger communities. There's the Coalition for Social Equity, who is part of our demand letter. We put that the county fair should offset the funds that they raise for the local fireman department to firefighter department to a fund with this organization to address gender identity education in their community. So we have to educate more people in the schools and in the community organizations all across the board. But also something is investing directly in trans communities and in trans leadership. And so part of the discussion that I've had with a number of leaders is how do we support more trans leaders in power positions, in places where they feel safe being themselves as community members in Columbia County. And so I think we're going to see how that will look. But I think those are just some of the various responses to, what can you do? Well, hold organizations accountable. Don't shop, don't go to places that are openly transphobic. Do the community education, which is the long-term work. Invest in leadership with the impacted community. That's a long-term work. These incidents happen, and sometimes people just say, this is terrible, this is Pennsatucky. So that reduces the situation.
I'm laughing, it's a joke.
And probably an insult to Kentucky. This is our state, this is our reality, and we have to be committed to the long-term work, not just the flash in the pan moment for that Facebook post of like, look, this is why we never go there. Well, people live here and they deserve to be just as safe as anyone else and not have to leave their community to be safe.
I'm so impressed with that for an answer. I mean, accountability at the end of the day, right? If you're just looking to reach, like, this was just a couple, maybe they're not involved in all the things we're talking about, but they're truly hurt. It's that community is where they are and they want to do something. And you brought up a good point with holding them, you hold the people that did the wrong accountable. And one great way, and we all know this, think about where you shop. All right, think about whose business that you shop in. These are ways that people can get involved and show their support and what their beliefs are. So thank you. That's a good one.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you. And I mean, I do hope I'm going to send this to the person who contacted us, because I want this couple to know personally. Right. We don't live in Columbia County, but I mean, we are united and we respect you and love you, even if you don't feel like you're getting that from your community. But I can guarantee you there are lots of people in your community who also love and respect you. Don't let the county fair folk change that for you.
Right. Talking about all of this today, Jason, I know we've been talking about it in regards to Pennsylvania, but for myself, and I know I can speak for Steven too, we're really talking about a bigger picture, really for our whole country. Because if you can set a model, right? If you can set a model, a sustainable model that people can follow state to state to state to state, I, for one, believe things are not getting bigger. It's getting smaller, especially with the pandemic. The world, I mean, we can broadcast. I could be talking to you in Spain right now, right? Like right in your living room in real time. And we have to all really look at it that way. So the kind of path that you're setting and the stones that you're laying, I think really apply for LGBTQ organizations throughout the country. And you brought up so many really impressive, valid points here today.
Absolutely.
I have a question. Oh, somebody put me up to asking you this question. A little birdie told me that you're studying Yiddish.
Yes, yo. I'm studying, which is yes in Yiddish, which is fun.
I was hoping I figured that one out.
You did? Okay. My grandmother actually, my father's side spoke Yiddish. I didn't know what that word meant. I've heard other Yiddish. So yeah, let me hear this.
I mean, family history, heritage is so important to me and central to my identity. And so I took Yiddish for 2 years in college. And this summer, given the pandemic and the flexibility of, my life right now, I was able to, and I got into this program. It's called YIVO, which is essentially the Global Institute for Yiddish Studies, and it's in New York City. And normally this renowned program is 6 weeks in the summer in New York City, but this summer it's over Zoom. So I'm able to participate, and it's been wonderful. It's 5 hours a day of Yiddish, and I love it.
5 hours a day?
Holy cow.
And it's Yiddish.
That's intense.
It's a hard language.
It is, but I love it, and I'm determined to speak it fluently. As actually 3 years ago, I saw this play called Indecent on Broadway, which is phenomenal. I encourage folks to research it. It's about this progression of a play called Goat Funakome, or God of Vengeance. In the early part, 1906, I believe it was first written by Sholem Asch, and its success in Europe, and then its eventual success in the Yiddish theater in New York City, and then its first night on Broadway. The central part of this story is a complicated but yet simple love between two women. And it was shut down on the first night it appeared on Broadway for being indecent, because it featured the first same-sex kiss on Broadway. Wow. And so this play, Indecent, is about this play and the progression of its story and how it's resonated with people, how it was performed in ghettos during World War II. So it was a very beautiful play, but it's a reminder of why it's so important to study the actual language. For me, there's over 1,000 years of beautiful poetry and plays that exists, and I want to access that. And it's important. I encourage anyone to look into their ethnicity, their background, and cherish and uplift it. And I hope that we all can live in a world where that's possible, to investigate and to live your full self however you want to honor your ancestry.
Wow, couldn't have said it any better ourselves.
So Jason, before we sign off, you kind of alluded to this before. How can people get involved with the Pennsylvania Youth Congress? How can people, get out there and help and promote your vision?
Thank you. So we are doing important work, and it's important that, anyone who is interested in getting involved reaches out to us, and we'll be more than happy to work with you, support you in the work that you may be doing locally. I get lots of emails every week from people who are doing advocacy, and they want support or advice, or do you have a model policy for that? And so we're here for you. But if you want to get involved with our organization, especially if you're a young advocate, teen, 20-something, young Pennsylvanian, what that means to you, we have our PYC ambassadors, which are a day-to-day frontline young leaders across the state who we provide training and tools and mentorship to do all sorts of incredibly important projects. Certainly we have our board of directors. We have our volunteer staff, or people who are working on specific projects within our PYC family. So that could be state policy across the street, or trans student policies, or we have an accessibility liaison working on addressing ableism in the LGBT community. So we have a lot of ways that young advocates can get involved. But for those who are maybe a little older than a young advocate, we need your help in terms of making sure this work is possible. We need your help in raising money and directly helping us with investments, because we're the leaders not of just tomorrow, but of today. And so we need your help. So there's a donate button on our website, or information on where you could send a check, or ask others to. Or you can email us anytime, info@payouthcongress.org, and we can get in touch with you about any way that you would want to help us directly with anything in terms of investment wise. But finally, just the engagement piece of the work we're doing. So you may see us working on a campaign for a trans student policy, and there's a call to action to write school board members. And if that's your community, please get involved. Everyone can get involved with our advocacy for statewide non-discrimination protections. So our campaign for that is called Pennsylvania Values, and you can go to pavalues.org, pavalues.org, and
Steven,
there we
hold on.
one more time, pavalues.org, and there we have all sorts of information on how to write your legislator, how to get involved. But further, also just give you the website of the Pennsylvania Youth Congress, payouthcongress.org, and that is where opportunities that I mentioned and the opportunity to donate are right there. And we are on the front lines in a lot of ways, and we're supporting others who are on the front lines in all sorts of different ways, like in Bloomsburg. We love our national organizations and we partner with them, but to consider getting involved and supporting your statewide and your local LGBT organizations, we're on the front lines doing the work and responding to and doing this important activism right here. So I encourage you to take a serious look on what you can do within your local community. And if we can support you in any way, if you can support us in any way, now is the time. We have a lot of work to do, and we're committed to pushing forward in every way we possibly can, because lives are on the line, and we have to continue to fighting for a better world for everyone.
Well, I have to say, again, I've said it before, but I am so glad I have connected with you and that our organizations are connected. Absolutely. And we definitely want to work with you to help build your organization, and then of course vice versa, you know. So we definitely appreciate you and all the work you're doing. I shared both the PA Youth Congress website and pavalues.org in the comments on both Facebook and YouTube, so you can access that, everyone.
And we can also we'll put it on our TriVersity page too, where we put everything. We'll put it in our newsletter and on our TriVersity page.
Absolutely.
It's been so terrific having you here today, Jason. Really, you're like the wind beneath our wings, really. Thank you so.
I'm just one of many, but thank you so much for this opportunity. I guess just one more thought. I think today we are starting the mourning process for John Lewis. There was a procession from Selma, Alabama over the bridge. I've been to Alabama many times, inspired to learn more about his activism, and that's part of why I started. So it's not just about knowing that you can make a difference, it's knowing that throughout history there have been incredibly brave, strategic leaders and community members who have fought relentlessly and succeeded. And so I very much consider myself a student of John Lewis, and I always have, and he'll be greatly missed. But his spirit and the spirit of so many others like him who had the strongest set of values and integrity and commitment to nonviolence, that is hugely inspirational to me and so many people today. And so whether we're looking towards the frontline advocates and fighters at Stonewall, the civil rights movement, we have been in the places where society is before, and we have to continue putting ourselves to the plow. It is possible when we have everyone working together toward a common goal for equity, justice, and liberation. And that's the work I'm a part of in Pennsylvania, and that I aspire to continue to live up to. So thank you for being a part of this larger community, and may we one day live in our beloved communities that we so deserve.
Absolutely. Thank you so much,
Thank
Jason.
you so much, Jason.
And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And again, real quick, another plug, as our producer tells us, like us on YouTube, subscribe to us on YouTube, like this video. We are so grateful. And thank you, Jason. Thank you, everyone. And we wish you all good night.
Have a good night, everybody. Jason, be well. Bye-bye.
You too. Thank you.